Hello, welcome to the F1 Time Portal, a Formula One history podcast started by two Formula One friends who are now enemies. I'm your host, Rosa.
Oh, you're running out of ideas, aren't you, Rosa?
Oh, no, you ruined it.
No, we can go with it. And I'm your hang glider host, Luigi. And today we're taking you back to the 1963 season, part 2. So let's go. That's okay. We can keep that intro, Rosa. It's funny. And hang gliders were invented in 1963 by an Australian.
Oh.
And when I say hang glider, apparently the term is the modern hang glider as we know it. So I don't know what they actually look like, but sort of to do with motor racing. It's movement, right?
What was the not modern hand glider? Was that just like throwing yourself off a cliff with a cape?
Yeah, a kite.
A kite,
yeah.
Yes, well, my reference was to what you introduced in our last episode, Luigi, points for podcasting. So,
oh, that's right.
Yes. Still, it's hitting me hard. Okay.
Yes, so you may recall, everyone, I gave Rosa a warning flag for not flagging a nonsense start by Gurney at the Dutch Grand Prix, and he went from last on the grid to second.
Yeah.
And just to emphasise how much of a nonsense start miss that was, when did Perez, it was at 2021 where he was last in the Force India and he won the race?
Was it 2021?
Oh, racing. It was called Racing Point.
Yeah, Racing Point. I think it was 2021.
And that was a record.
Yes. Yeah.
Gurney nearly got that record in 63 and Rosa didn't nonsense call it. Yeah. So.
Okay. On to race 4. We're at the French Grand Prix. It's June the 30th. We're at Reims, 53 laps, 19 drivers and a 3x2x3 grid formation. So we're only 1 week after Zandvoort, so teams had to rush to Reims, but there were still some teams missing for first practice. And with rain falling, it wasn't until the last session that the grid was finalised. Clark set the fastest lap 4 times to take pole with 2 minutes 20.2 seconds ahead of Hill with a time of 2 minutes 20.9 seconds in his new BRM again, and Gurney third in the Brabham. Surtees.
I was just going to say, when you said Clark set the fastest lap 4 times, that made me think he set the same time 4 times, but I think it just meant he set the 4 fastest times.
Yes, he kept bettering his lap time. So Surtees in the Ferrari and Brabham lined up on the second row. Things got messy on race day, and not for the reasons you may expect, Luigi.
Interesting. Okay. When you say this, expectations of messiness are high, so let's see if you live up to the expectations.
Well, it's not me, it's the race. But anyway, so Hill's engine wouldn't fire, so the starter instructed the BRM mechanics to push start the car and then wheel it back to its proper position on the grid.
Isn't that instant disqualification for getting like external assistance? Like, isn't that the number one thing that really upsets the FIA of the time?
You'd think so, but local rules imposed a 1-minute penalty on Hill.
Ugolini, where are you? Surely the other teams complained. And time penalties, is that fair? Considering everyone else was disqualified up to this point we've ever heard about it, you know?
I know. I didn't read anything about other teams complaining at all, but it gets weirder. But I'll leave that as a little surprise for later. I'm going to keep that one under my hat. So, I might actually get another red card. But anyway, I'm not going to tell you how badly it goes. But anyway, so the race at the start, the starter drops the red flag, causing massive confusion on the grid.
That is hilarious. Like, I mean, red flag means race stop, right?
Exactly.
That's red flag. Is that or the black flag? Black flag is race stop or red flag? I think red flag is stop.
I think red flag is stop. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to do a podcast you're on right. Flags. Anyway, if we're confused,
that's a really confusing message. Like stop start.
Yeah,
that's what that's saying.
Yes.
Anyway, we need to do a deep dive into his safety flags.
And the flags.
Well That's going to be on our ideas list. Yeah.
So 17 of the 19 cars ended up getting away, except for, I'm going to have to say Phil Hill here because he's in the news now, and Gregory, who stalled their engines. But hang on, they were allowed to be push started after the others had gone.
What? This is mayhem. Did someone just throw the rule book out the window? This is the second rule break.
Yeah.
And the race has just started. One was before the start and one was after the start, after the red flag start.
Yeah. So, again, Clark was in good form and opened up a 3-second lead on the opening lap. There were lots of jostling for position behind him until mechanical issues started to sort some things out. Ginther retired with a pierced radiator, Gurney lost a lap with a broken gear lever, and Surtees ran into fuel pump trouble. This allowed Brabham into second ahead of Taylor and McLaren. After 12 laps, Clark had an 18-second lead, but suddenly his Lotus couldn't reach the top revs per second, I think. I think that's
revs per minute.
Revs per minute.
Revs per minute second.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think rev per minute. Multiple minutes. What I was going to say is this is only lap 12.
Yeah.
These are cars that are just having problems straight away. Like, don't they do these cars properly? I'm just worried about that.
I know.
You know, considering how dangerous it was to have all these failures.
I know.
At high speed, that's scary.
I know, very scary. So so Clark has an 18-second lead, but Brabham couldn't reel him in, and the gap was still 12 seconds at halfway through the race. Taylor had made his way alongside Brabham and on lap 27 overtook him for second until a sheared generator forced him to pit and eventually retire from the race. McLaren then suffered an ignition fault, giving Hill third. Then it started to rain.
Wow. I mean, there's so many retirements and issues being resolved in the pits. Rain, that'll make it interesting. Yeah, you're right. This is getting to be a messy race, but yeah, keep going. Sounds interesting.
So Clark initially stretched his lead, but as Brabham got used to the conditions in his Brabham, he closed the gap to about 20 seconds with 10 laps to go. But then Brabham had engine issues, dropping him to sixth. 2 laps later, McLaren's transistor box burnt out, bringing his Cooper to a standstill, giving Brabham fifth.
Wow. Mechanical issues are winning the race, I think.
Yes.
They're the winners.
Yeah, they are. The order is now Clark, Hill, Mags, and as the race was coming to the final stages, Clark eased off to allow Brabham and Gurney to unlap themselves and chase after Hill and Mags.
It's very interesting. I wonder if it was his intention, but it's a clever strategy because the idea was that he let them get ahead so that they don't come after him.
Yeah, so that Hill and Mags now have to watch out for Brabham and Gurney rather than chase him. I mean, why would you let anyone unlap themselves, really? I don't know.
Depends if they're a teammate and you want them to have an extra lap to try to gain a position or something.
Yeah, but Brabham and
That's the general thinking.
Yeah, but Brabham and Gurney are not close.
They're a lap behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, but I don't get it. But there must have been something to understand at the time that made sense. I'm sure he wouldn't have done it without thinking about it.
I think he was protecting his position on the track. Like if Mags and Hill have to watch out behind them, although it's going to take some time, then it gets him off the hook. Hill's clutch then kept slipping. And keep going. What is it? What is it now?
I just wanted to say that, and this thinking is all done by Clark.
Yeah.
There's no team radio. No. It's him trying to work out what to do to help himself and the team, more likely himself. And that's pretty amazing because these drivers had to think on their feet. A lot like some of the drivers today that are very good at that. Like I call Alonso one of those drivers of today that's very good at thinking in the track.
Yeah. And Sainz is getting that reputation as well.
Yeah, he is for sure. Young Alonso.
So Hill's clutch starts slipping, allowing Mags to overtake him on the second to last lap, but he was able to hang on to third place by 1.3 seconds after deducting that 1 minute penalty he attracted at the start of the race. But here's my little surprise that I was saving. Here's the kicker. The FIA of the day, the CSI, withheld the 4 championship points because of the push start, even though he was allowed to keep his third position.
That doesn't make sense. Like, why let him continue if he can't keep the points? Like, they must have done it in hindsight, right?
Well, I don't know, but
Like-
it sounds like it. It sounds like they were just making up the rules as they went along. I don't.
Yeah. And it shows there's not consistency. The CSI and the race organisers basically had two different ways of viewing the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit ridiculous. It's reasons like this that many of us know that when the FIA formally came into existence in 81, I think, that's when they made same rules all tracks.
Yeah.
Which I still sort of think doesn't apply because we have different tracks doing different the stewards do different things and different tracks. But yeah, that changes. But this shows that inconsistency. I mean, how frustrating for Graham Hill to not get the points for third.
Yeah, I know. Silly.
Mm.
And just a little interesting fact, by finishing 7th at 19 years and 345 days old, New Zealander Chris Amon in the Lola Climax became the youngest driver to finish a World Championship race.
That's amazing. And that record held for 38 years until it was broken by none other than a young Fernando Alonso at the 2000. Because he's old now. It's 2024, but he made his debut in 2001 Australian Grand Prix.
Oh, wow.
So
there you go.
23 years ago from now.
Yes.
and he beat Eamon's record, which is pretty impressive.
Okay.
So in the championship, we've got Jim Clark leading or running away with it, to be honest, on 27 points. Dan Gurney is second on 12 points. Remember, half those points came from that nonsense race that Rosa didn't recognise. Third is Richie Ginther on 11. Bruce McLaren 10 and Graham Hill 9. So Graham Hill should have been actually on 13. Actually, he would have been second in the championship if he got those points. Then in the constructors, you've got Lotus on 28, Cooper on 16, BRM third on 14, and Brabham fourth with 13. So Lotus really jumping ahead in both the constructors and the drivers.
Yes. Okay. And now they're at their home Grand Prix. We're at the British Grand Prix. It's the 5th race of the season out of 10. It's July the 20th. We're at Silverstone, 82 laps, 23 drivers, and a 3x2x3 grid formation. So crowds are really happy to be back at Silverstone, particularly to see Clark, who was favourite to win, having won the previous 3 races. So Clark took pole with a blistering 1 minute 34.4 seconds, and even Hill was a full second slower. But Gurney took second in the Brabham with 1 minute 34.6 seconds, and Hill third, and Brabham took the last spot on the front row.
Could I just say very quickly, the crowds were excited to see if Clark could win this race because it's his home race. But this is 63. Graham Hill's also from the UK. Graham Hill's driving a British car, and he's the 62 defending champion.
Sorry, BRM.
So it's like,
yes.
What about the sales? What about the sales for the ticket sales for good old Graham Hill? So Clark, I think, had a bit of a magical aura about him, and I think that's playing out in this comment by Mike Lang. Or Mike Lang is just a Clark fan.
Yeah, but also he had won the previous 3 races, so he was running pretty hot. He was coming in on form, and they wanted to see the amazing Clark. Yeah, absolutely. But I do think he did have a magical aura. Surtees in the Ferrari was 5th alongside the 2 Coopers of McLaren and Mags. So at the start, Clark didn't shoot into the lead. Instead, it was the 2 Brabhams who took the lead, with McLaren and Hill close behind, also beating Clark off the line.
A comparatively bad start by Clark. A moderate nonsense start. But when last time I said this, he took the lead by lap 2 or something.
Well, you've called it again. By lap 2, Clark was already up in second, and by lap 4, he had passed Brabham to take his usual spot out in front.
Yeah, he doesn't need good starts with that Lotus. He just needs to drive and have a reliable car, and then he'll do the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So behind Brabham, Gurney, McLaren, Hill and Surtees made up the top 6. By lap 10, Clark had a 10-second lead over the Brabhams, and McLaren was out with engine trouble. And on lap 28, Brabham's engine blew up.
Brabham in the Brabham is having a really bad run with mechanical issues on that car. Gurney seems okay, though.
Yeah.
It's just weird that it's just happening. This happens a lot in Formula One history too. We see one teammate gets all the problems and the other one doesn't. And it's just sort of luck. A team would never sabotage one driver.
Well, and Brabham wouldn't sabotage his own car. Like, it's his own team.
At least he's at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would know. He would know if he was sabotaging himself.
Right. Hill and Surtees were racing nose to tail, but were losing ground on Clark and Gurney, who were also getting further apart as Clark continued to dominate. At the halfway mark, Clark led Gurney by 16 seconds. 18 laps later, his lead over second became 50 seconds as Gurney's engine blew up.
Oh, no. Sorry, Dan. You also are unlucky, just like Brabham, in the Brabham.
Hill and Surtees, now in second and third, were battling hard, while further back, Bonnier and Ginther were keeping fourth interesting until Bonnier started losing oil pressure and suddenly stopped. Nothing further really happened until the very last lap when Clark crossed the finish line for the win. Hill was running out of fuel, and as his car spluttered to the line, Surtees closed the 3-second gap and took a surprise second place, while Hill freewheeled it across the line in third.
Wow. Running out of fuel on the line, it's almost unforgivable, isn't it? I mean, it's so close. So he lost second place for that.
Yes. Yep.
Big cost.
Big time. And like they would, I mean, we didn't hear about pit stops, but they back in this day they did do refueling, didn't they? No, I've not read about it.
Actually.
Yeah, I've not read about it.
You talked about banning oil top-ups. You talked about banning oil, but you clarified to me that wasn't fuel.
No, that wasn't fuel. No. Yeah, anyway.
Well, they don't mention
it. Interesting.
And a lot of cars nowadays, and I'm sure they did this back then. Actually, no, they wouldn't have done it back then because they didn't have safety cars and things like that. But the car, let's say it's a 100 lap race. The modern day Formula One teams will allow for a safety car and some sort of slowdown or virtual safety car. So they might fill the car up with 96 laps of fuel, and they didn't have that in those days, so this is a miscalculation. Or was Hill being inefficient and over-revving or something? I don't know.
But he lost a place.
Do we blame Hill? Do we blame the team? Yeah, he lost a place. He got third, though.
Yeah.
So Clark is leading the championship with 36. He's really running away with it, having won 4 in a row and making the British crowd happy. Ginther is second with 14 points, and Ginther is in the BRM. Graham Hill third, also in the BRM on 13 points. Remember, he's lost the second place and he was taken a third place away the previous race. I don't think Graham Hill was really running in the championship anyway, but he would have been higher up. Surtees is fourth on 13. And in the constructors, we've got Lotus still leading on 37, BRM second on 18, Cooper on 16, and Brabham on 13, and Ferrari sitting in fifth on 13.
Hey. On to Germany, the sixth race of the season out of 10. We have, it's August the 4th. It's at the Nürburgring, 15 laps, 22 kilometres a lap, 22 drivers and a 4x3x4 grid formation. The practice was again interrupted by mechanical issues for BRM, and with rain also slowing down the times, the grid took all 3 sessions to land. Surtees broke the 9-minute mark first with a time of 8 minutes 46.7 seconds, but this was only good enough for second place as, guess who? Clark. Clark sets a time of 8 minutes 45.8 seconds. Bandini in the Centro Sud BRM was third fastest, Hill fourth and McLaren fifth fastest, all setting times under 9 minutes. As the flag fell on race day, Clark took an immediate lead. That's more like it, isn't it? But not even a quarter way through the first lap, he lost a cylinder and Ginther was able to overtake him for the lead. By the end of the first lap, Surtees had also overtaken Clark to take second, with McLaren fourth and Hill fifth.
Wow, this is interesting. Clark slipping, not usual for Clark to be slipping back like this. Those other drivers would have known something was wrong with his car.
Yeah, yes. On lap 2, Ginther's BRM, currently in the lead, starts jumping out of gear, dropping him to fifth. Even worse, Mayresse, back driving for Ferrari after an accident at Le Mans kept him out for 3 races. He crashed and was seriously injured. His Ferrari overturned, which injured him seriously to end his racing career.
That's pretty sad. At least he survived. I hope he had a healthy life after that.
Yes. I didn't see what actually happened to him after his racing career, but yes, as you say, at least we didn't see the tragedy during the race. Amon also had an accident at the same corner and he sustained serious knee injuries, and this was on lap 3, and Hill retires with a broken gearbox.
This track is really taking no prisoners, isn't it? It's always a very demanding track no matter what era we're in, but this track on this calendar these days, it's a very polarising track with drivers either loving it or hating it because of its sheer length being about 22 kilometres. The safety wouldn't have been great.
No.
And, we're hearing about all these accidents now and careers being ended, serious injuries being handed out. It's concerning, isn't it?
It is. I don't know how I feel about seeing it back on the calendar in our era. I wonder whether the racing would be interesting or not. Like you say, it's a very, very long track.
I think if they brought it back, they'd obviously put railings protection.
Yeah,
so I would love to see it. I would love to see it as long as I knew that it was safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know if it'd be cost effective.
Yeah,
22 kilometres.
22 kilometres. I mean, like you say, the safety things that they have in place now are really high class. You know, they're pretty good. And, yeah, putting it in would cost a fortune for this track. But anyway.
Yeah, maybe as a one-off they could do it. It would be very popular.
I agree. So Clark's cylinder kept cutting in and out. Remember, he's lost a cylinder. So even it wasn't totally out. Sometimes it cut back in, as did the order between the two drivers. But by lap 8, Clark's engine had deteriorated and Surtees was at last able to draw away. McLaren then crashed and was rendered unconscious due to a broken rear wishbone, which put Ginther back in a podium position in 3rd.
That's a big call that he was rendered unconscious. I mean, that's pretty serious. I'm glad all these accidents aren't fatal because this track is very difficult to get medical assistance to the drivers due to the sheer size. So we don't know exactly where on the track. But, to be rendered unconscious shows a real impact.
Yes, also glad he was okay. Even with a cylinder missing, Clark was still able to lap faster than Ginther, who was now driving one-handed due to a misbehaving gearbox, which kept trying to jump out of gear.
So this is so impressive that these drivers are driving one-handed, and we don't see it at all these days because we have two drivers basically struggling with something and likely not knowing that the other was also dealing with an issue at the same time. Yeah. So they must have been wondering, why isn't he pulling away? Why isn't he pulling away? But they're probably just doing the best they can with what they've got. And let's not forget, was it 2 years ago or a year ago that Gurney was driving with a plastered arm?
Yes, I think it was last year, yes.
Last year, so 1962. So this is like unbelievable stuff. We just don't see this much nowadays.
So Surtees crossed the finish line well over a minute ahead of a very forlorn Clark. This gave Ferrari their first championship win since the 1961 Italian Grand Prix. Ginther finished a distant 3rd. Wow.
Has it been that long that Ferrari have really been out in the wilderness for basically nearly 2 years, I'd say. So what month was this race? Because the Italian Grand Prix is normally in September, August. Yeah, it's basically about 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's pretty full on. And this race is also notable for being the only time Jim Clark ever finished second in a race, which is not a normal position for him. And he had that cylinder issue as well. And it's actually the only race of the season won by a non-British team.
Right.
So, well done, Ferrari, on breaking through.
So based on the story you told at the beginning, no one would have been happy with that, or the British team's going, damn it.
No. But they would have acknowledged, finally, we blocked them for 2 years. So there would have maybe a celebration, but more likely, damn it, I'm guessing. So Jim Clark's leading the championship with 42 points, well ahead of Surtees, who jumps up into second place on 22, but like 20 points behind. Ginther third in the BRM on 18, Graham Hill fourth on 13 and Dan Gurney 12. And in the Constructors, Lotus is running away with it as well, 43 points, followed by Ferrari, who jumps up to second in 22, then BRM 22, Cooper, and then Brabham.
Yeah, Lotus and Clark are just dominating, aren't they? They're just going to I mean, we've got, 4 races to go. Okay, speaking of which.
Yeah, I don't see anyone else winning.
So race 7, Italian Grand Prix. It's September the 8th. We're at Monza, of course. 86 laps, 20 drivers and a 2x2x2 grid formation. So the organisers initially decided to use the longer combined road and banked circuit here, but were forced to revert to the road circuit halfway through the first practice session after a number of breakages to cars caused by the rough circuit increased the danger to drivers and spectators. So after one incident where a car spun off and flew off the track, the police stepped in to declare that protection for spectators was inadequate around the banking section.
That's crazy that it took the police.
It took the police to come in. I know.
I had to reread that twice when I first read that because this is your race summary, Rosa.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is what it took.
Yep.
It's like not the drivers, not the spectators, not the Formula One organisers,
No.
but it took the police to say, yeah. And what country? Of course, it's Italy.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Italy Grand Prix is the one where they sue people for like I think even Adrian Newey when Senna died in 92, there was a whole lot of legal risks and discussions there. So, yeah. Anyway.
So there was a petition. You're right. The drivers and spectators were signing a petition at the time to not use the banking section, but they then didn't have to go ahead with it because the police canned it. So that was good. So only 20 cars were allowed to start this race, with organisers accepting no one who failed to achieve a time less than 10% slower than the second fastest practice time.
I did read some controversy about this, which I found a bit funny but typical for Monza perhaps. But Chris Amon had a big accident during practice, which left him hospitalised and unable to take the start.
Yeah, he was okay, I think,
this
but he had to go to hospital.
Yeah. So this would have promoted a driver called Cabral, who qualified 21st onto the starting grid, because remember, only the top 20.
Yep.
However, on race day, Baghetti, who was the 25th quickest in qualifying, lined up on the starting grid instead. And a race report from the time speculated that this was as a result of the race organisers arranging for Baghetti to start so there could be an additional Italian driver in the race.
Look,
does that sound legit to you?
Well, Monza, they sort of, like the organisers always try to give Ferrari the advantage here, whether it's using the banked race, the banked bit, or I don't know, they always do something. They always allow extra Ferrari driver. It is a bit funny.
Yeah.
Not surprising though.
Yeah, it's like of its time.
Yeah, it is. It is. And
how's Cabral going to feel? What reason did they give him? I don't know what country Cabral is from, but they probably said, look, dude, you're not Italian. Don't fight the system.
That's right.
And they probably pointed to a police officer. And a lot of the police officers in Italy, the last time I was there, which is a long time ago, but it was at the airport, they had machine guns.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if they had them at the Grand Prix track though.
No, hopefully not, but we never know.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to qualifying. Surtees, using the new semi-monocoque Ferrari, took pole with a time of 1 minute 37.3 seconds. Hill second, just 0.2 of a second slower, and Clark fourth on the second row alongside Ginther. At the start, Surtees hesitated slightly, which was all Clark needed to edge past the Ferrari and get alongside Hill, but it was Hill in front at the first corner, with Surtees second and Clark a very close third. Wow, that would have been an amazing start, like they all jostling there. On lap 4...
Yeah, typical slipstreaming battles.
Yeah. On lap 4, Surtees passed Hill. Clark followed Surtees, leaving Hill in third. Surtees, though...
Slipstreaming.
Yeah, more slipstreaming. Surtees, though, had other ideas than towing the Lotus around, so he tried to shake him off, but Clark stuck to him like glue, and they both pulled away from Hill and Gurney running fourth. Occasionally, Clark would pull alongside the Ferrari, but Surtees held him off until lap 17, when the Ferrari's engine suddenly blew, leaving Clark to continue alone. Without his tow, though...
That would have meant... I wonder how many crowd disappeared at that very second.
Yeah. Without his tow, though, Clark was caught by Hill and Gurney, and soon the three cars were involved in a tremendous battle. On lap 40, Hill's clutch had started to slip and he began to lose touch with Clark and Gurney. 9 laps later, Hill was forced to retire. By then, Clark and Gurney had lapped the entire field, with Clark having gotten the better of Gurney's Brabham. On lap 63, Gurney was having trouble with his fuel feed and had no alternative but to retire. Ginther was now in second place, just ahead of Brabham, Ireland, McLaren and Bonnier. As the race drew...
This is the first time we've heard those guys.
Exactly.
There's lap 63.
Yeah.
There was a lot happening at the front. Yeah.
As the race drew to a close, Bonnier and Brabham had to stop for fuel, both losing 2 places.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so fuel stops were there. So that running out of fuel in the last race by Graham Hill was unforgivable.
Unforgivable, yeah.
It's official now. It's officially unforgivable. Yeah.
Clark, meanwhile, was at ease out in front and allowed Ginther to unlap himself before taking the checkered flag.
I noticed Clark does that a lot. Lets drivers unlap themselves. I guess it's better than what Phil Hill did when he was lapping the back markers in that 1961 race and he smashed into Sterling Moss. So
yes.
Yeah, so at least Jim Clark knows how to deal with that situation.
Yeah, he just lets them.
So good on you, Clark.
Yeah, good on you. So Ginther finished second and McLaren third as Ireland's engine seized on the second to last lap, but still classified as fourth as he completed 84 laps faster than the other finishers.
But that's that new rule, isn't it? That whatever 70.
It was 2/3, I think.
Finishes?
Yeah.
2/3. Yeah. So this is 5 victories to Clark in 7 races, and this makes Clark and Lotus undisputed world champion with 3 races to run, and this was a championship first by winning with that many races to go.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, and for myself included, Clark has a legendary status. Like a lot of people of my generation, my age group, in 2024, I'm in the 45 to 55 range, and people in that range tend to really hold a candle to Senna, but people of the older generation, they actually hold Clark to a higher level because they saw the results and the performances. And 63, I would call peak Clark. I mean, Clark wins a lot more, but he's really in a zone here, and it's amazing to read about it and hear about it for me.
And him and Lotus was they were an iconic kind of pairing. I think he drove for them his whole career, didn't he?
Correct, yeah.
So
I better do the championship standing.
Yeah.
So Clark leading the championship, winning the championship on 51. He may get more. I expect he will. Richie Ginther is second with 24 points. Ginther's in the BRM. And he's outperforming his teammate Graham Hill, by the way, who's a 62 defending champion. Surtees third in the Ferrari on 22, and Bruce McLaren in the Cooper fourth with 14. And Graham Hill, I'm just mentioning it because he's in the other BRM, is fifth with 13. And in the constructors, we've got Lotus winning it and leading it, 51 points, followed by BRM 28, Ferrari 22, Cooper 21 and Brabham 15.
Yes. So I think we're going to call it there because there's a few races to go, and we'll do that in the final part of 1963 next time.
Yeah, just because the championship's decided doesn't mean there's not more awesome stories to hear.
No, absolutely not. But, we think it's a good time to break.
Excellent. See you next time, guys. Bye.
We have a Patreon.
Yay, we're a professional podcast now. So it means a lot to us if you are able to support the F1 Time Portal podcast.
For a small monthly fee, you not only get ad-free podcast content, you will also receive special episodes that are exclusively uploaded for our Patreon financial supporters.
We promise at least 2 additional exclusive episodes each month aligned to the decade we are up to in the show.
And you will also be able to make suggestions about any special episodes you may want us to research and present. We can't promise that we can do all of them, but we will consider them.
So, if that sounds like an entertainment bargain to you, go and sign up at patreon.com/F1 Time Portal today.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please tell your friends and non-F1 friends alike.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate us 5 stars or whatever highest is available on the podcast platform that you use.
We have a range of social media handles for you to connect with fellow listeners, so look up F1 Time Portal on all the usual platforms.
Or visit us at www.f1timeportal.com or email us at f1timeportal@gmail.com.
We would like to give credit to our primary reference materials, a series of books called Grand Prix by Mike Lang.
We also use many other written and digital references, which are in our show notes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.